Okay, let's get into this. We've got a really interesting source today. It's a blog post.
Yeah, titled Leaves by someone calling himself an engineer with an E.
Right, an engineer. He's retired, looking back on almost 50 years of marriage, but that's just the starting point.
It really is. Because the core of it, well, it becomes this reflection on memory, on aging, and even dementia.
And he doesn't ease into it, does he? The author, Larry Dean, he makes this claim that's, well, pretty bold.
Very bold. He says flat out, he has dementia. And then he says, you do too.
Based on that simple memory test. Right, the one lots of us get at the doctor's office.
Exactly. Trying to remember 5 words. He lists them. Apple, table, penny, carpet, watch, and then recalling them later.
So that's our mission for this deep dive, really, to unpack his view. This idea that memory loss is maybe just normal aging. We
What?
need to look at his personal angle and the clinical stuff he leaves in.
He starts with this really nice analogy, doesn't he? Memories are like leaves on a tree.
Yeah, I liked that. Green, then changing color, gold, red, brown.
And eventually falling away. It sets this tone, kind of removes the panic, maybe,
Mhm.
sees it as a gradual, natural thing.
It's a striking image. Okay, so he brings in some clinical backing for this idea that everyone has a little dementia. What's that?
Right. He introduces the Global Deterioration Scale, the GDS, developed by Dr. Barry Reisberg.
Global deterioration scale. Sounds quite heavy.
The name is a bit stark, yeah. But it's a standard tool. It outlines stages of cognitive decline in dementia.
7 stages, I think.
That's right. Stages 1, 2, 3 are really subtle. Stage 1 is no outward behavior. Basically, no signs anyone would notice.
Very mild changes. And the later stages, 4 through 7, are more what people typically think of as dementia. Moderate to very severe decline.
Exactly. That's where you see more impact on daily function. But here's his controversial twist.
Ah, okay. This is where he says everyone is on the scale.
Yes, he argues everyone is at least stage 1. His logic is, well, is stage 1 cancer still cancer, then stage 1 dementia is still dementia.
So he's using the very first point on a clinical scale, the point representing no observable symptoms, to say we're all already on the dementia spectrum.
That's the crux of it. It's provocative. It reframes the whole conversation away from just diagnosed life-altering conditions to, well, the earliest potential biological changes, maybe.
Okay, so less about a diagnosis today, more about acknowledging a potential starting point. Does he give any numbers on where most people actually are on this scale?
He does. Cites figures suggesting for those over 65, something like 90% are below stage 4.
Below stage 4, so minimal to mild changes, if any are noticeable at all.
Right, and only about 3% are in the severe stages, stage 5 or higher. So
That's a-
significant decline is much rarer than just being, in his view, at stage 1 or 2.
What about risk factors? What does the source say drives progression up these stages?
The main one, overwhelmingly, according to this source, is just age, which, well, none of us can stop.
Can't argue with that one. What about family history?
Mentioned, but he presents it as much less significant than simply getting older.
And lifestyle. Does he talk about things we can control?
Yeah, he touches on things like, avoiding heavy drinking, managing blood pressure, cholesterol, stress, the usual suspects. He says these may help slow things down. Maybe.
But not guaranteed. Is there anything he highlights as definitely helping?
Puzzles and games.
Mm-hmm.
He seems quite keen on those. The source suggests they do help slow the ascent up that GDS ladder.
Interesting. It's like a practical takeaway. And despite the serious topic, his overall tone is quite light.
Surprisingly so, yeah. He finds humor in it, talks about the perks of having, as he puts it, a little dementia.
Perks, like what?
Well, like never seeing TV reruns because every show feels new.
Mm.
Or people liking you when you ask their name again. He even jokes it's a good excuse to get out of doing things.
Uh-huh. Okay, that's certainly one way to look at it. Which brings us back to where we started, that memory test.
Apple, table, penny, carpet, watch.
Right. He throws down the gauntlet again at the end.
He does, and his take is stark. If you couldn't recall those 5 words after a short time, he suggests you might be past stage 4 and should, maybe get checked out.
It's a blunt instrument to make his point about awareness, I guess.
Definitely. So putting it all together,
Yeah.
his personal view, the leaf analogy, this GDS framework,
Yeah.
it leaves you thinking, doesn't it?
It really does. What does normal memory change as we age? And where's the line between, just being a bit forgetful sometimes and something needing clinical attention? That's maybe the real question to ponder after hearing his take.
It's now just me and my wife of almost 50 years. living a life of retired bliss and letting all the memories of my attempts to solve the problems of this world melt away like glacier ice. Which brings up another reason for my writing this book, getting all this stuff down on paper before I forget it. Never mind that my memory has already become selective. An Engineer's Tale, page 13. Apple, table, penny, carpet, watch. Say these words aloud and memorize them. Medicare has started having me do this test as part of my annual physical to determine if I have dementia. It turns out that I do, and so do you. Memories are like leaves on a tree. They start out fresh and green. As time passes, a few are lost, while others turn to gold. With more time, many of the gold ones turn red, then brown, then fall away. A Dr. Barry Reisberg, who is the clinical director of New York University's Silberstein Aging and Dementia Research Center, defines something called the Global Deterioration Scale, GDS. Odd name, global deterioration, sounds very apocalyptic. You'd think it had something to do with climate change, not brain health. It is widely used by doctors to assess the progression of dementia. Dr. Reisberg says there are 7 stages of dementia. Stages 1 through 3 are no outward behavior, very mild changes, and mild changes. Stages 4 through 7 are moderate, moderately severe, severe, and very severe. So everyone is at least at stage 1 dementia. Stage 1 cancer is still cancer, so I guess stage 1 dementia is still dementia, right? For those of us over 65, 90% of us are still below stage 4. About 3% of us, though, are over stage 5. According to the Alzheimer's Society, the major risk factor for dementia is age. Not much a person can do about not getting older. A far less risk factor is family history. That's good for me. My folks were messed up, but they seemed to remember every infraction they ever did to each other. Well, you can't not get older, but if you don't drink, don't have blood pressure or cholesterol issues, and don't get stressed out, you may not move up the dementia ladder as fast. Not much I can do about this stuff either. Doing puzzles and games does slow your ascent up the ladder. I do like puzzles and games. Maybe I've got a chance. There's really nothing wrong with having a little dementia. I never see a repeat on TV. And folks seem to like me asking their name. I've also found that, as a senior, faking dementia is often a good way to explain why you forgot to do something. So what were those 5 words? Don't look. If you can't recall, you're over stage 4. Get help.